And we're back. We are. We came back. We promised we would, and we've done it.
Like Lazarus. Actually, I don't know if Lazarus promised anything.
We're toe fungus.
He
We're
just
just
was back. That's all.
We're just here. We're just here.
We never go away.
I'm
Like
Scott Stantis. I'm Scott Stantis coming to you from the right.
And I'm Ted Rall coming to you from the left.
So two big stories on the international scene. Actually, three. Well, two and a half. Let's say two and a half. First off, Ukraine. The country of Ukraine has invaded sovereign Russian territory, just as the Russians were showing some success in the Donbass. Am I saying that correctly, Ted?
Yeah, the Donbass is fine. Yeah,
Donbass.
There's just Donbass.
Donbass. Thank you. Yeah. Donbass region. And they're moving into Russian territory, which has apparently surprised the Russians. It's something I have thought that they would do for months and months and should have done for months and months and months. Because then, if you remember the Kosovo War, I mean, we tried doing this stuff, nothing happened. And because the Serbians weren't paying any price for this. And so we bombed Belgrade. Oh gosh. Belgrade. And we bombed it.
And we bombed the Chinese embassy. Oops.
Well, we did that. Well, there's it's a win-win for everyone. But we also bombed a bridge, and I love the video from the airplane that launched the missiles, because this guy in a car is driving across the bridge.
Oh God.
And just as he gets over, the bridge goes.
You mean like with him on it, or?
Oh no, he just gets over. Oh. He's on line, and that must have been something to see in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, you go home and tell your spouse, "Oh my God, how was your commute?
Won't believe.
How was your commute? Oh, holy shit!
How was
traffic? How was the bridge?
How was your day at the sauerkraut factory?
The news is I'm never going to have to deal with that fucking bridge again."
Yeah, because they did it. The attack, if you remember, was at like 1 or 2 in the morning. It was designed to have the lowest number of casualties. That's kind of, what this looks like is, and then the Serbian government finally almost immediately, the people of Serbia said, "Oh, wait, this sucks. This war. Oh, we're going to have to pay a price for this. Oh, fuck no." And that's when things actually came to a conclusion. I'm thinking this may be
one of the few times in history that, I'd forgotten that example, where an aerial bombardment campaign succeeded in regime change.
I hate it.
I don't think it usually works. Almost never.
It works to soften up the enemy. Usually the enemy's
waiting for it. Well, it did this time. It normally doesn't work.
Right.
Not to. It fucks them up, and you could argue that it softens them up. But ultimately, usually for regime change, you really need ground forces.
Right. And so I hated that this was successful. I know that sounds so terrible, but I hated that it was successful because it meant there was no skin in the game for the United States. We didn't send boots on the ground. There was no price to be paid. We literally did a Nintendo attack.
Nothing but glory. Are you kidding? Yeah. Bill Clinton got to then broker the Dayton Peace Accord.
And get a pizza delivered. Just saying. Free pizza.
No, they went to, I know the whole story. It's actually very funny because I'm from Dayton, as you know. And so the talks were held at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And they had been getting basically canteen food delivered and maybe the occasional Domino's pizza. And the leaders of Serbia, Croatia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina were getting, spicy, because they were like, "We're missing, this sucks." And being from Dayton, I can tell you it's hard to get a good meal. So they finally, and things were stuck, and Bill Clinton was there. And, Bill Clinton, he likes him some fast food, but he likes him some food. And so finally he went to them and he's like, "Listen, if you guys all sign this current iteration of the agreement, I'll let you leave the base." He effectively had kidnapped them, not allowing them to leave. It's like, "We will leave. And to celebrate, we will go to L'Auberge restaurant in Kettering, Ohio. French restaurant, 3 stars. It'll be yummy and French." And so they were like, "Fuck it." Milosevic and the gang, they all signed it, and they all and that was like within walking distance of the house where I grew up. The L'Auberge, it is no more. It was a very stodgy, old-fashioned French restaurant, and it had sort of a more modern cafe part. But I remember when you walked into the old part, they had like the seating charts for like the date and peace accords and everything like on the wall. It was really kind of fascinating.
Oh, wow. So, okay. So all that history being what it is, now Ukraine has re-energized their armed forces, re-energized the people who support them. I think from what you're hearing from inside of Russia, the Russians are going, wait a minute, Vladimir told us this was not going to hurt us, and now it is. Uh, uh, and also, didn't they just, Ted, correct me if I'm wrong, in the last 48 hours, Ukraine sent a whole bunch of drones towards Moscow. They shot them down, but
Yes.
Moscow was actually under attack.
Well, that's happened before. There's been some Muscovite apartment buildings have been attacked, set on fire by drones. There was some Eastern Orthodox church that was set on fire also by a drone. But I mean, there hasn't been like mass casualty events. But
so where does this go from here? I mean, you were relatively recently in Russia. You're familiar with the region. You're certainly familiar with the politics of the region. Does this move that needle? Does this change things? Or are we still headed towards what you and I have predicted, which is a peace agreement that's going to see some territory ceded to the Russians and, but peace in that region? Does
well,
this
I'm not a
change
military
anything?
strategist, but I do think the Russians don't really care about this incursion. If you think about World War II, the Russians basically, one of their tactics is we have a lot of land. We have more land than anyone else. We have the most land. We have 11 time zones. So they're like, oh, you want to invade a border region. You've taken no major cities. You're basically, we'll evacuate our locals out of there. And then, we'll take our time. But what I think the Ukrainians were hoping for has not materialized, which was for a significant number of Russian troops to be redeployed away from the Ukrainian front toward the motherland to defend Russia in the Kursk incursion. They sent some troops, but not very many. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians, however, did have to pull troops away for this offensive. So you have this weird situation where the Ukrainians they're gaining ground in Russia at the same time that they're losing ground in Ukraine. To me, the examples that I think of are the Battle of the Bulge, the last, desperate gambit by the German army in World War II. It was the last gasp before the end and the surrender. It also reminds me of the invasion, the only Confederate invasion of the North in the Civil War, in the Battle of Gettysburg. And, again, it was kind of like we have to bring the war to the North. It's all been fought in the Confederacy. But of course, that also was the beginning of the end for the Confederacy. This seems like a desperate gambit. If the Ukrainians had ginned up some secret reserves to do this that nobody knew existed, that would be different, but they didn't. So they're losing, I mean, all that Putin really wants for real is to keep Crimea and recapture all of Donetsk and Luhansk. So Western Donetsk has fallen into Ukrainian hands, and he wants to keep those. He will be able to recapture those now. And in the meantime, he's taking his time. And I think Western analysts are misreading the situation in Kursk. They're like, well, look, they've lost territory. They've lost territory that they don't really care that much about. And they're taking their time bringing up reserves to encircle the Ukrainians. And they will, take their time and just grind them down there. I would say it was from a PR standpoint, an excellent move by the Ukrainians, but from a strategic point of view, it's a strategic loss. It's an error, I think, because you can't be emotional about war. You have to be cold-blooded and just be like, what gets you closer to victory? And what does victory look like?
Right.
For the Ukrainians, I don't think there's any world in which the victory that they had imagined, which is to recapture all of Crimea and restore Ukraine to its 1991 borders, that world doesn't exist.
So let's move the spotlight over to the Middle East and Gaza. That seems to still be slogging away. I'm not sure if there's anything left to level, quite frankly, but they seem to be finding things. Where are we with that? I mean, and does it end? Is there a ceasefire? There was rumors that the Israelis had agreed to a ceasefire earlier in the week, and the Palestinians had not responded yet, but that story seems to have evaporated into the ether. And the Israelis are saying, no, we haven't agreed to anything. We're not done.
There's completely conflicting reports. Biden had announced that he had come up with a formula that we don't know what the contents were exactly, but it seems to have been a 3-part formula that had been agreed. And he basically told both sides, you have to agree to this. According to him, they had. Then the Israelis said, no, we didn't. Then Hamas said, well, we do. And then Israelis killed Ismail Haniyeh, the head of the chief negotiator for Hamas. Hamas, unsurprisingly, got spicy about it and decided that they didn't find that to be a very nice thing to do. And so they decided to say, well, okay, maybe we're not going to bother to send a representative. But when they were asked, does that mean no representative means that you are reneging on your previous agreement? They said no, but then Hamas complained allegedly that Israel was now trying to change the terms that they had previously agreed to. That's all the messaging. Who knows what's true and what's not true? We know Haniyeh is dead and that Hamas isn't pleased about it, and Iran is not pleased about it. One thing that has pushed the Iranians, that has pushed this ceasefire talk to the top of American policy priorities, is that Iran has signaled that they will not retaliate militarily against Israel in any significant way over the murder of Haniyeh, who was assassinated in Tehran. So that's pretty insulting to the Iranians, that they'll let it go if there's a long-term or permanent ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. Then they'd be able to say, look, we achieved some sort of victory for the Palestinian people. So that's why there's a push to do this. But I don't get the sense that a ceasefire would be beneficial for either side at this point, particularly not the Israelis. I mean, Netanyahu goes to prison if this war comes to an end. So he's not highly motivated to come to terms. And Hamas is probably feeling like they can run out the clock. I think they probably like the look of the American elections right now. They were a little scared that Trump was going to be restored, and then the Israelis would have an even freer hand. I think Hamas is thinking, not that Kamala is on Team Hamas, but just that she will not give the Israelis as free a hand to do what they've been doing.
Okay. And Iran, where's Iran in all this? So has Iran, you just mentioned that they've said, we're not going to respond
we're
militarily.
waiting. They're like, we owe you. We're going to punch you in the face, but we may decide not to do it. But we've got to see some progress on the Gaza front.
Okay. Well, on that, we are going to wrap things up here because Ted has to go get his car.
I do. My car is sadly waiting for me in Queens.
Oh,
well, actually, gosh. My car is happily waiting for me. The dealership people are really happily waiting for me with their credit card machine ready.
Yes,
to go.
They are. Yes, they are.
If the economy's not going well, it's not my fault. I'm stimulating the economy like a bitch.
Like a gigolo.
Yep.
Where can we see things all Ted Rallian?
Go to Rall.com, go to whowhatwhy.org. It is Saturday. My newest cartoon should be posted up there. Go to Centerclip, which is an app on both major app stores that both Scott and I are on. You can go to gocomics.com/Ted Rall, although inexplicably there's no more comments anymore. And you can go to X Spaces or Rumble and watch my radio show, and which is watch my radio show or listen to it. It's The Final Countdown with Steve Gill and I, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until 12 noon Eastern, but you don't have to listen to it live. You can always stream that sucker. Scott, where can you find your stuff?
Well, you can go to gocomics.com/Scott Stantis, see my editorial cartoons. You can go to gocomics.com/Prickly City, where you can see my political comic strip, which does still have comments on it, by the way.
Ooh, wait, what? Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah, it's
the
because it's a
comic
comic
strip
strip.
does, but not the editorial cartoon.
Because the geniuses at Go Comics, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can go to Chicago Tribune.com/opinion, see a gallery of my work there. You can go to Dallas News for the Dallas Morning News and see a gallery of the work I've done for them. And you can go to smirkonish.com, sign up for his newsletter. I draw one a week for him. And yeah, that's a lot. So there it is, right there in a hot, steamy pile.
2 breaking news things as we head
Oh,
off
let's hear
into
it.
the
Let's hear
ether.
it.
RFK Jr. reports that Kamala Harris refused to even talk to him once when he
Yeah.
was
Yeah, I
thinking
heard
about
that.
dropping out. And also, the Boeing Starliner astronauts will be stuck in space until at least February. The most thing I most heard recently about was because the spacesuits weren't compatible, and apparently you don't really need one, but it's like a emergency backup in case something goes wrong.
Well, it's another Boeing product. Ted, what could possibly go wrong when you completely and utterly gut your quality control department? The thing was leaking before they launched,
Right.
and they think they fixed it, and then they launched it. It's like
my car.
exactly. Well, they can't just go over to Queens to get a new one. This was supposed to be a 10-day visit for them, and they've got them do.
To Queens can take 10 days.
There's 9 people on the space station right now. It's designed to sleep 6, by the way. So the 3 of them, the 2 from the Starliner, from the Boeing vehicle, are having to sleep. One's having to sleep like in a next to where the sleeping bays are, but the other one, the guy's sleeping in the lab. He's just got they have an emergency sleeping bag for these guys. They
pull
tie
out the
them
air
to a wall.
mattress.
But the problem is, it's the closets that they have to sleep in are very cozy. You can put in 2 laptops. You have your stuff. It's dark. You're strapped to the wall, so you're not floating all over the place.
That would be a bummer.
This is literally a sleeping bag that's strapped to one of the sides, because there's are no floors or ceilings or whatever. But you're just strapped in there in a lab where the lights don't go off.
So it's like being at Rikers.
Yeah, or Gitmo. It's
the lights are on all the time. By the way, honestly, I mean, when I hear all these stories, it's funny how like Americans just don't care about this. We should talk about prisons at some point.
Oh yeah,
but like like the lights are on all night, and that's supposed to be okay. Or there's southern prisons where every single summer a considerable number of inmates die from heat exhaustion and heat stroke because there's no air conditioning.
Ted, I live in a state where they're going to suffocate a man to death for the death penalty, and that's supposed to be, that's not cruel and unusual.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really extreme. But I mean, even just something like really like sleep is super, super important. Before all the latest unpleasantness in Israel, the Israelis' number one method of torture was sleep deprivation. And most victims of torture who literally will say, I would rather you cut off my finger than like keep me awake for 4 days at a time. I mean, sleep deprivation is brutal. And it's a violation of basic human rights. And, it goes on in prison every single day. It's horrid.
And we're going to have to talk about that because it is an issue I've cartooned about extensively and am deeply concerned about, because, and you're right, southern prisons. Don't forget, what was that? The sheriff, the dipshit Arab sheriff,
Arpaio,
Arpaio, who had tents out in the courtyard to house prisoners in Arizona. I've been in Arizona. I lived there for years. I've been there when the high was 124 degrees.
Yeah.
You can set your oven at that.
Yeah.
Okay. Just say. All right.
No, so I get it. And then of course humiliated them with making them wear pink underwear and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, what an asshole.
Anyway. Oh no, yeah. Anyway, so on that note, I hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time on the next DMZ America podcast.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See you on the other side of 61.
Woohoo!